Okay, just making a quick video about Douglas Valentine, and he is an independent writer, researcher on the CIA and covert CIA drug smuggling. And I first did a blog on Douglas Valentine 3 years ago, and I just had the honor of having an email correspondence with Douglas Valentine. So 3 years ago, I don't even remember what I posted here. Courting the Compatible Left. So yeah, I mentioned how Sherman Skolnick was this lawyer in Chicago, and he discovered how the CIA was funding these leftist foundations that would then fund the Nation magazine. I think that was one of them. Yeah, and how I point out how, if you read the Wall Street and the Russian Revolution, and that professor, I've corresponded with him too, but he was published by the same Trine Day publisher that published Douglas Valentine's books. So Douglas Valentine, he first wrote a military book based on his dad's experience in war camp in I think it was like a Japanese war camp in World War II. And based on the success of that book, Douglas Valentine won the confidence of the CIA director Cord Meyer at the time, and then Douglas Valentine was given access and promotion to the CIA high-level coordinators of the Phoenix program that Douglas Valentine wrote a book on, and this became the definitive book on the Phoenix program. And one thing I noticed is that Douglas Valentine has his interviews that he did to research that book. He has them uploaded onto archive.org, which is the sort of like internet, the Wayback Machine or whatever. So I actually listened to several interviews that Douglas Valentine did with these CIA Phoenix program. They weren't all just CIA, they were, military working with the CIA, stuff like that. So Douglas Valentine's big point is that the Phoenix program became like the definitive strategy for how the military is integrated with civilian control domestically, even though the CIA, it's supposed to be illegal for the CIA to have domestic operations. And let's see what else I wrote. Right, so okay, so talking about Palestine here. Right, so basically how the CIA uses its client states to then fund terrorists and mercenary armies and all that. It's all very convoluted and hard to follow all the machinations of the empire. But there's a lot of psychological warfare involved, and so they're talking about Edward Lansdale and the Trine Day publisher. His dad, Chris Milligan's dad, actually had worked with Edward Lansdale on this psychological warfare that started in the Philippines, And the U.S. genocidal invasion of the Philippines was to prevent. They were scared. The elite in the U.S. were scared that Germany was gonna take over the Philippines and basically take over after Spain. So the U.S. had the war with Spain was basically just a competition to control Western imperialism. And so then Edward Lansdale, there was a communist uprising in the Philippines in the 50s, and then after that he transferred to Indochina and used the same tactics there, which was psychological warfare and false flag operations. So after that point, it gets very hazy what's actually being done by the communists and what's actually being blamed. On the communists when it's actually done by the special forces or CIA psychological warfare. So a lot of this, it seems very general at first, and let's see. So that was 3 years ago. So then I found one of the fascinating interviews that Douglas Valentine did was with this guy Brady, and his full name's Edward C. Brady, and he really. And then I did a follow up on him to see what had happened to him, and sure enough, he actually promotes Douglas Valentine's book. So I emailed this to Douglas Valentine, and he thanked me for letting him know. He didn't. I guess he didn't know that, or he didn't know this one quote, at least, that there is also a book on the Phoenix Program called The Phoenix Program by Douglas Valentine. It is fairly critical, but it is not untrue, and received a lot of good press. So another thing is Douglas Valentine. He writes for the Counterpunch newsletter, which I've been reading off and on for the past 30 years, because a friend of mine from my first year of college, he recommended that Counterpunch to me back 34 years ago. Time flies. Okay. So here's the interviews on the archive.org with the Phoenix Program. So Douglas Valentine has about a dozen of these interviews, and the sound quality is not that good, but
no, in the United States, we lived in Canada for a couple of years.
So you can, when you listen to those interviews, you will get a lot of details. I mean, this is the inside story from the military, and then that guy Edward Brady, he went on to be the executive director of DARPA, which is one of the top military research programs. And so this is not, this sort of like corroborates Douglas Valentine's research, that these guys that created the Phoenix Program were not just some side gig thing in the military. It was like one of the three top means that the CIA used for sort of like controlling the Indochina, what was genocide, because over millions were killed. And as they point out, there was more bombs dropped just on Vietnam than the whole Pacific in World War II. Anyway, so it seems like ancient history now. I sent Douglas Valentine the email I'd gotten from Noam Chomsky, because Douglas Valentine said that Noam Chomsky had helped him out when he first got started on the Phoenix Program research back in 1984. And I didn't ask for details. I don't know, how Noam Chomsky helped him out, but who knows. And So, I looked up like Douglas Valentine's books. They got bought by academic libraries. So if you look up, there's like maybe 150 libraries that bought one of his books, or he followed up after his Phoenix Program book. He wrote books on the drug smuggling in the CIA and how the CIA was actually started by the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, which so there was already a direct drug connection to the CIA. And then Douglas Valentine documents that the same exact people who planned the Phoenix program actually went to El Salvador and then set up the same Phoenix program in El Salvador. And there was a man who came to Minnesota for sanctuary, and he had actually been trained by the CIA to do this same Phoenix program in El Salvador with the same assassination and torture and psychological, false flags and all that. And he had to use a fake name because, of course, his life was threatened for going public about it. And then the INS wanted to deport him, of course, because they didn't like him exposing the U.S. military role in El Salvador and Central America in general, Operation Condor. And of course, this also happened in Southeast Asia the Indonesia and Malaysia. And a lot of it was like picking up what the British had done. This is what Douglas Valentine documents, is that there's a direct lineage from the British use of this same kind of psychological warfare and genocide, and then that being picked up. And this also gets into the research of H.B. Albarelli, who I pointed out to Douglas Valentine that his book, The CIA as Organized Crime, actually he gives a overview of the JFK assassination, and he makes the same connection how William Harvey had hired the mafia in Europe, the Corsican mafia, which then H.B. Albarelli connected back to the Nazis in World War II that the CIA was working with, that they were part of the JFK assassination through this mafia connection. And so Douglas Valentine, he basically summarized the whole background, the secret covert background of the JFK assassination. He did it very succinctly, and he had figured it out early on. But then H.B. Albarelli wrote this huge tome on it called the Coup in Dallas, and then H.B. Albarelli. That tome was actually a follow-up of his book A Secret Order, which is about the CIA controlling psychiatry and the MK Ultra being just a part of the psychiatry industry and the connection to big pharma and everything that now is just totally mainstream, because you turn the TV on, you're just inundated with big pharma propaganda. Let's see, so that was the last thing that Douglas Valentine, he thanked me for sending him this, but then he's like, I sent him the links of his books that were online, and he did get one of them removed because I was reading the Phoenix program online for free, and he says, well, he depends on being a writer as his career, and he asked me to buy his books, and I said, well, yeah. So I ordered the CIA as Organized Crime book, which is published by Clarity Press, which is a sort of like, I don't know, a socialist public press and so I don't know, he's probably, I don't know how much he's going to make from that. Maybe $5 or $10. They don't, you don't make, I don't know how he gets paid for articles sometimes and he gets some royalty payments, but I'm not, it's kind of like farming. Like if you're a farmer, the U.S. median income for farming was $210 in just a few years ago, and sometimes it's negative. So pretty much to be a farmer, you have to have a second job, and of course, farming, that's foundational. You gotta eat food, but or writing. So anyway, what else do we have here? Yeah, this is okay. So I also made a playlist of his interviews that are on YouTube. Let's see if I have those. I should have linked those. Oh, I'll have to link them in this blog post, but I'll link it. I'll put it link it in this video, and that's pretty much all. I just wanted to plug Douglas Valentine's work. Oh, of course, I bought his latest book from Trine Day, which is his like memoir. That sort of what he did though is he went back to Indochina in the early 90s, and he actually interviewed these CIA drug smugglers firsthand. They're still living in China, so it's or in Indochina. It's like the best firsthand evidence that the CIA is directly involved, with drug smuggling. Because like when I talked to Vice President Al Gore, I said everybody knows the CIA is complicit in the drug trade, and soon after that, his Secret Service guys were like, "Come on, Al, let's go." And then he flew off in his helicopter, and then I got pulled over by a cop on the way home because the mayor was there, and they wanted to find out, who I was. The cop never said why he pulled me over. He just, took my ID information. Anyway, so Douglas Valentine takes that a step further, where it's like the CIA is not just complicit in the drug trade; they are, they're actually smuggling the drugs, working directly with the drug smugglers and making sure. And he points out that it was in 1954 that the CIA got a legal deal with the Justice Department that the CIA would not be none of the CIA assets would be prosecuted. They'd be protected from any kind of drug convictions. And that I thought that was in the 80s, but that was in 1954. I found I wasn't sure if that was a typo or what, but I'm assuming he's a Douglas Valentine. He's a very well-educated researcher. I think his degree was in creative writing or something, but he's got that kind of like old school education, college, well educated degree. Let's see. Well, that's pretty much it. But so I should get the CIA's organized crime book pretty soon in the mail. Yeah, you can read it free online, but like he said, he's depending on book sales, so that's kind of tragic. I mean, the internet. On the one hand, you get all this information, but then it's hard. Like I know that was a big deal for musicians where they like people downloading all the music and then they had lawsuits about it and blah blah. But you don't really find that for writers where they're not getting that kind of protection. So I wish him the best of luck. he's like 75 now or something. That's pretty much it. And I'm going to stop this now and hope people can buy his books.